Somewhere between the invention of the supermarket and the rise of the supplement industry, something was quietly lost. Not forgotten by accident, lost by replacement. Replaced by things that cost more, do less, and require a label to explain what they are. The people who came before us, ancient Egyptians, traditional Chinese physicians, indigenous healers across every continent, medieval European herbalists, farmers in the mountains of the Andes, they didn't have pharmacies. They didn't have laboratories. What they had was time, observation, and an intimate understanding of the plants growing around them. And the results? Civilizations that, in many cases, lived longer, moved better, and healed faster than we give them credit for. Here is what modern science is starting to confirm. Many of those plants weren't superstitions. They were solutions. And most of them are still available right now in your garden, at a farmer's market, possibly growing unnoticed in your backyard for next to nothing. Today, we are going to look at 15 plants that ancient and traditional cultures used as medicine, food, and economic survival tools, all at once. Not one or two of those things, all three. And by the time we get to number 7, you are going to question why you have been spending money on things you never actually needed. And number 3, one of the most overlooked plants on this entire list was so valued in ancient Rome that soldiers were literally paid in it. This is not a wellness trend. This is not a fad. This is a reckoning with what people already knew, before the modern world convinced them to forget. Let's go back. 15. The weed that healed armies. Plantain. Most people walk right past it. It grows in sidewalk cracks, along hiking trails, in overgrown gardens, in lawns across every temperate climate on Earth. Most people either ignore it or try to kill it. Traditional cultures didn't. Broadleaf plantain, not the banana-shaped fruit, but the low-growing leafy herb, was one of the most universally used medicinal plants in human history. Indigenous cultures across North America used it for wound treatment, insect bites, and skin irritation. Viking and Anglo-Saxon healers carried it on military campaigns. Traditional European medicine listed it as one of the 9 sacred healing herbs for over 1,000 years. What makes it remarkable is what modern biochemistry has started to unpack. Plantain leaves contain aucubin, a compound that has been studied for its anti-inflammatory effects. They also contain allantoin, the same compound found in commercial skin healing products, which has shown potential in supporting tissue repair and reducing irritation. The mucilage in the leaves creates a natural, soothing barrier when applied topically, which is exactly why traditional healers used chewed or mashed plantain leaves on stings, cuts, and inflammation for generations. As food, young plantain leaves are edible, slightly bitter, nutritious, high in calcium and vitamins A, C, and K. Traditional communities in Eastern Europe still use them in salads and cooked dishes. This plant requires no cultivation. It asks for nothing. It simply grows, waits, and offers everything it has to whoever takes the time to look down. That is where this list begins, because the most overlooked things are often the most powerful. 14. The kitchen staple that was once a full medicine cabinet. Garlic. Long before it became a cooking ingredient, garlic was a clinical tool. Ancient Egyptian workers building the pyramids were reportedly given garlic as part of their daily rations, not for flavor, but to maintain strength and reduce infection under brutal physical conditions. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine in India used it to address digestive issues and circulatory problems. Ancient Greek physicians prescribed it for respiratory conditions. Medieval European communities used it as a primary defense during plague outbreaks. These cultures were onto something that modern microbiology has since confirmed. Allicin, the sulfur compound released when garlic is crushed or chopped, has been studied extensively for its antimicrobial, antifungal, and anti-inflammatory properties. Research suggests allicin may help inhibit the growth of certain bacteria and fungi. Studies indicate garlic consumption may support cardiovascular health by helping to regulate blood pressure and cholesterol levels, and its prebiotic properties have shown potential in supporting gut microbiome diversity. The critical detail traditional cooks understood and modern cooking often ignores is that allicin needs time. Crushing garlic and letting it sit for 10 minutes before heat exposure allows the enzymatic reaction to complete, preserving more of its active compounds. Ancient herbalists didn't know the chemistry, but they observed the difference. Garlic is one of the cheapest foods on Earth. A single bulb costs almost nothing. The health food industry has bottled its compounds and sold them back at dramatic markups. But the original form, used correctly, still works the way it always has. The ancient world didn't have supplements. They had garlic, and they built civilizations with it. 13. The cooling herb that manages more than flavor. Peppermint. Peppermint has been trivialized. It became gum, it became candy, it became an air freshener. Most people have no idea what it was actually used for. Traditional Chinese medicine used peppermint known as bohi to address headaches, digestive issues, fever, and respiratory discomfort. Ancient Egyptian medical records reference the use of mint in preparations for digestive distress. Greek and Roman physicians used it in everything from stomach treatments to wound applications. The active compound in peppermint, menthol, is not just a cooling sensation. It interacts with the body's TRPM, 8 cold receptors, in ways that have been studied for real physiological effects. Research has shown peppermint oil may help support the relaxation of smooth muscle in the digestive tract, which is why it has been studied specifically for conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. There is also evidence suggesting peppermint oil inhalation may help reduce tension, headache intensity, a use traditional cultures employed for centuries before clinical trials existed to confirm it. Peppermint is extraordinarily easy to grow. It spreads aggressively, thrives in containers, and produces more than most households will ever use. One plant, properly maintained, can supply a family with tea, topical preparations, and culinary use year after year. The ancient world used this plant as a multi-tool. The modern world turned it into a candy coating. 12. The bitter root that detoxified empires. Dandelion. Here is something to sit with. Dandelion is one of the most aggressively eliminated plants in suburban culture. Billions of dollars are spent every year on herbicides, specifically designed to kill it. Meanwhile, traditional European, Chinese, and Native American medicine traditions treated it as one of their most valuable healing foods. Every part of the dandelion is usable. The root, the leaves, the flower. Traditional Chinese medicine used dandelion root as a liver and digestive support herb for centuries. Native American healers used the leaves as a kidney tonic and diuretic. European herbalists used the roots and leaves to address liver congestion and digestive sluggishness. The plant was cultivated as a food crop in medieval Europe, eaten in salads, brewed into tonics, and used as a coffee substitute during times of scarcity. Modern research has begun to validate these uses. Dandelion root contains inulin, a prebiotic fiber shown to support gut microbiome health. Studies suggest dandelion leaf may have diuretic properties. Research has examined dandelion's potential in supporting liver detoxification pathways and regulating blood sugar levels. The leaves themselves are nutritionally dense, higher in beta-carotene than carrots, rich in calcium, iron, and vitamins K and C. This plant grows freely everywhere. It asks for no cultivation, no care, no investment. And yet the modern world spends more money eliminating it than most people spend on vegetables. There is something deeply wrong with that picture. 11. The ancient grain that never really left. Amaranth. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the Americas in the 15th century, they encountered a civilization built in part on a plant they had never seen. The Aztec Empire used amaranth as a primary food crop so central to their culture, their economy, and their physical endurance that the Spanish made a deliberate effort to suppress it. That suppression worked for centuries. But here is what they were trying to eliminate. A plant so nutritionally complete, it borders on remarkable. Amaranth is one of the few plant sources that provides all 9 essential amino acids in meaningful quantities, making it a complete protein in a way most grains are not. It contains more iron than most vegetables, more calcium than milk per gram, high levels of magnesium, and a compound called squalene, which has been studied for its antioxidant and potential cardiovascular protective properties. Traditional Aztec warriors carried it on long marches. It was used as a weaning food for infants. It was prepared in dozens of forms, ground into flour, puffed like modern cereal, cooked into porridge, pressed into high-energy bars that ancient long-distance runners relied on. Squalene aside, amaranth's fiber content and its naturally low glycemic impact make it relevant to modern conversations about blood sugar regulation, something traditional communities understood not chemically, but through generations of observing who stayed strong and who did not. Amaranth is still available. It is still cheap. It is still one of the most nutrient-dense foods on Earth. The conquistadors did their best to make it disappear. It didn't. 10. The leaf that fed generations and still goes unrecognized. Moringa. If there were a single plant that could reasonably claim the title of most nutritionally dense food source ever documented, moringa would have a strong case. Every part of this tree, leaves, pods, seeds, roots, has been used across traditional cultures in South Asia, Africa, and the Middle East for at least 4,000 years. Ancient Ayurvedic medicine in India listed moringa as a treatment for over 300 conditions. Traditional African communities used it as a survival food during famine and drought because of how quickly it grows and how much nutrition it provides. The numbers are difficult to argue with. Gram for gram, moringa leaves contain more protein than most legumes. Studies indicate they carry high concentrations of iron, calcium, potassium, and vitamins A, C, and E. They contain quercetin and chlorogenic acid compounds that have been studied for anti-inflammatory and blood sugar regulatory effects. Research has also examined isothiocyanates in moringa compounds that have shown potential in studies examining cellular protection and anti-inflammatory pathways. Traditional use was not ceremonial. It was survival-level practical. Communities that had access to moringa trees could sustain children through periods of food scarcity in ways that communities without it could not. This was observed over hundreds of generations before any laboratory confirmed the mechanisms. Moringa powder is now sold in boutique wellness stores at premium prices. The tree itself grows in warm climates with almost no care and produces leaves year-round. Traditional families in tropical regions have been growing it in their backyards for millennia. The wellness industry found it. Traditional cultures never lost it. 9. The spice that changed trade routes. Turmeric. Turmeric is everywhere now. Lattes, supplements, skincare serums. The golden spice has become the poster child of the modern wellness trend cycle. But the reason it became a trend is the same reason it was irreplaceable across traditional Asian and Middle Eastern cultures for over 4,000 years. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine used turmeric as a primary anti-inflammatory, digestive aid, wound treatment, and liver support herb. Traditional Chinese medicine incorporated it for blood circulation and pain management. Ancient Persian physicians used it for liver and digestive conditions. Okinawan communities famous for their extraordinary longevity consumed it daily as part of their regular diet. The compound at the center of this history is curcumin. Research has studied curcumin extensively for its potential anti-inflammatory effects, and it has shown meaningful activity in laboratory models involving inflammatory pathways, specifically its interaction with NF-κB, a molecule that plays a key role in regulating inflammation at the cellular level. But here is where traditional wisdom showed something modern supplementation initially missed. Curcumin is poorly absorbed on its own. Traditional preparations almost always combine turmeric with black pepper and healthy fat. Black pepper contains piperine, a compound shown in studies to dramatically increase curcumin bioavailability, in some research by up to 2,000%. Traditional cooks did not know the biochemistry. They knew the food worked better when prepared a certain way. They refined that observation over thousands of years. Modern science eventually caught up and confirmed the mechanism. Before we go further, if this content is changing how you think about the food already around you, take a second and let us know in the comments. And if you want to keep going deeper into this kind of knowledge, make sure you are subscribed. There is a lot more where this is coming from. 8. The flower that managed the most feared diseases. Elderberry. For most of human history, influenza was not an inconvenience. It was a killer. In the winter of 1918, it killed more people globally than the entire First World War. And for the thousands of years before modern antiviral medicine existed, traditional cultures had to find solutions through observation and accumulated experience. Elderberry was one of those solutions. Native American tribes across North America used elderberry preparations for fever and respiratory illness. Traditional European herbalism listed elderberry syrup as a primary winter immune preparation for centuries. Ancient Greek physicians documented its use. Hippocrates himself reportedly called the elder tree his medicine chest. Modern immunological research has begun to examine why this widespread traditional use persisted for so long. Studies suggest elderberry extracts may help support immune response by interacting with cytokines signaling the chemical messaging system that coordinates immune activity. Some research has shown potential in reducing the duration of cold and flu symptoms, with several clinical studies demonstrating measurable results. Elderberry is also rich in anthocyanins, the flavonoid compounds that give it its deep purple color, which have been studied for antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. Elder trees are easy to cultivate, grow quickly, and produce fruit prolifically. Traditional communities planted them near homes, specifically to have medicine and food within arm's reach during harsh winters. A single elder tree can produce enough fruit for years' worth of preparations. The modern supplement market has captured the extract and priced it accordingly. The tree will do it for free if you give it ground and sunlight. 7. The root that was worth more than gold. Ginger. There is a reason ancient spice traders risked their lives crossing deserts and oceans for ginger. In ancient Rome, ginger was so valued that a pound of it was reportedly worth the equivalent of a month's wages for a laborer. In medieval Europe, it was used as currency. In traditional Asian medicine, it was prescribed for everything from nausea to joint pain to respiratory illness. None of that was superstition. Modern biochemistry has validated the mechanisms. Ginger contains compounds called gingerols and shogals, particularly concentrated in dried ginger, which have been studied extensively for anti-inflammatory and anti-nausea effects. Research suggests these compounds may inhibit the same inflammatory enzymes as some over-the-counter pain medications. Studies indicate ginger may help support healthy digestive motility and has shown meaningful results in reducing nausea across multiple clinical trials, including in pregnancy and chemotherapy contexts. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine had a concept for ginger that modern research is beginning to map onto real biology. The idea that ginger kindles the digestive fire. What they were observing before any understanding of biochemistry was the compound's ability to stimulate gastric emptying, saliva and bile production, and gut motility. The metaphor was prescientific. The effect was real. Ginger grows easily in containers. A single small rhizome purchased for almost nothing will produce a full plant. One plant will supply a household with more fresh ginger than most families need. It can be frozen, dried, powdered, and prepared in dozens of forms. Civilizations traded fortunes for this root. It is now available at any grocery store for a few coins. That contrast should tell you something. 6. The green that ancient warriors refused to march without. Stinging nettle. The name alone has deterred a century of potential discovery. Stinging nettle is one of the most feared and avoided wild plants in the modern world. It is also one of the most nutritionally complete and medicinally studied plants that grows freely across temperate climates. Viking culture used stinging nettle extensively as food, as fiber for rope and cloth, and as a plant preparation for joint conditions. Traditional European herbalism used it for urinary health, seasonal allergies, and as an iron supplement during pregnancy. Roman soldiers reportedly rubbed nettles on their skin in cold climates to stimulate circulation, a painful but reportedly effective method of warming the body. The sting, counterintuitively, was also used therapeutically. A traditional practice called urtication, deliberately applying nettle stings to arthritic joints, was documented across multiple traditional cultures. It sounds extreme, but modern research has examined the anti-inflammatory compounds in the plant itself, and studies have shown nettle extracts may help modulate inflammatory pathways relevant to conditions like joint pain and seasonal allergic response. From a nutritional standpoint, nettle is extraordinary. It is high in iron, calcium, magnesium, and vitamins A and C. When cooked, the sting is completely neutralized. Traditional cultures prepared it exactly like spinach in soups, stews, and sautéed dishes. It tastes better than spinach, grows more aggressively, and requires no cultivation. The plant most people rush to avoid turns out to be one of the most complete nutritional and medicinal resources that nature offers without charge. 5. The ancient seed that replaced an entire pharmacy. Fenugreek. 3,000 years ago, in ancient Egypt, fenugreek was found in the tomb of Tutankhamun. It appears in some of the oldest medical texts ever discovered, including the Ebers Papyrus, one of ancient Egypt's primary medical documents, where it was recommended for fever reduction, inflammation, and respiratory conditions. Traditional Ayurvedic physicians prescribed it for diabetes-related symptoms. Traditional Chinese medicine used it for kidney and digestive support. Ancient Greek and Roman physicians used it as a topical wound treatment. For a plant that now sits obscurely in the spice aisle, this is a remarkable history. What makes fenugreek biologically interesting is the compound 4-hydroxyisoleucine, an unusual amino acid found almost nowhere else in the plant kingdom that has been studied specifically for its potential effects on insulin. Signaling and blood sugar regulation. Studies indicate fenugreek seed consumption may help support healthy blood glucose levels, which aligns with millennia of traditional use in cultures that had no concept of insulin but observed, practically, who stayed healthy on which diet. Fenugreek also contains galactomannan-soluble fibers that may help slow glucose absorption, support cholesterol metabolism, and feed beneficial gut bacteria. The seeds can be sprouted, cooked, ground into flour, or used as a spice. The leaves are edible and nutritious. The plant itself can be grown easily in a garden or container. Ancient healers across 3 continents identified this plant as essential. They had no way of knowing why it worked at the molecular level, but the observation that it did work, documented and refined over thousands of years, was more than enough. 4. The tree bark that outperformed its modern replacements. Willow. Before there was aspirin, there was willow bark. And what most people do not know is that aspirin was directly derived from willow bark, or rather, from the reverse engineering of the compound salicin, which white willow bark naturally contains. Traditional healers in ancient Egypt, Greece, China, and among indigenous North American peoples all used willow bark preparations independently, across cultures that had no contact with each other, for the same purpose: reducing fever, pain, and inflammation. That level of cross-cultural convergence is not coincidence. It is the result of different civilizations arriving at the same truth through independent observation. Hippocrates recommended chewing willow leaves to reduce fever and pain. Traditional Chinese medicine used it for inflammatory joint conditions. Native American healers used willow bark tea for headaches and musculoskeletal pain. Medieval European physicians made it a standard preparation for fever management. In 1897, a chemist at Bayer synthesized acetyl salicylic acid aspirin by modifying salicin to reduce stomach irritation. The modern pharmaceutical industry built an empire on that single observation, derived from a tree that traditional healers had used freely for over 2,000 years. The willow tree has no awareness of what it contributed to modern medicine. It simply grew, as it always has, along rivers and streams, offering its chemistry to anyone who understood what they were looking at. Traditional cultures understood. The knowledge got lost. Modern science rediscovered it and packaged it into one of the most widely used drugs in human history. 3. The herb that Roman soldiers were paid in. Rosemary. This is the one that changes the way you look at your spice rack. In ancient Rome, rosemary was considered so valuable that soldiers were sometimes compensated with it as part of their pay alongside salt, which gives us the word salary. It was burned in homes to purify air and reduce illness. It was placed in granaries to repel insects and preserve grain. It was used in preparations for memory, concentration, and headache relief. Ancient Greek students wore rosemary garlands while studying to improve recall. Traditional European medicine used it for circulation, digestion, and scalp health. At the time, none of this had a biochemical explanation. It was simply what had been observed to work. Modern research has since begun to examine why. Rosemary contains rosmarinic acid and carnosic acid polyphenolic compounds that have shown antioxidant and anti-inflammatory activity in studies. Research has looked at rosemary's potential effects on cognitive function. Some studies have suggested that even aroma exposure to rosemary essential oil may have measurable effects on alertness and memory performance, possibly through inhibition of acetylcholinesterase, an enzyme involved in neurotransmitter breakdown. Rosemary is also one of the most effective natural food preservatives ever identified. Studies have shown rosemary extract to be comparable to synthetic preservatives like BHA in delaying oxidative spoilage, which is exactly why traditional cultures used it instinctively in preservation and cooking. You can grow rosemary in a small pot on a windowsill. It asks for little, tolerates neglect, and delivers compounds that civilizations once valued more than coin. The Roman soldier carrying rosemary as part of his wage knew something modern kitchens have mostly forgotten. 2. The vine that traditional cultures used as both food and medicine. Bitter melon. Bitter melon is one of those plants that modern Western culture has almost entirely overlooked, while traditional cultures across Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and South America have used it as both daily food and primary medicinal plant for thousands of years. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine used bitter melon as the first-line recommendation for blood sugar management long before the concept of diabetes as a diagnosed condition existed. Traditional Chinese medicine used it for fever, inflammation, and digestive conditions. Caribbean traditional healers used it as a preparation for immune support. African traditional medicine incorporated it for a range of inflammatory conditions. The breadth of independent cultural use for the same physiological targets suggests something real was being observed. Modern research has studied bitter melon specifically in the context of blood glucose regulation, and the findings are notable. The fruit contains compounds including charantin, polypeptide P, and vicine compounds that have been studied for their potential to mimic or support insulin activity and improve glucose uptake in cells. Some clinical research has shown measurable effects on blood sugar in human studies, though more research is ongoing. It also contains mumordicin compounds that have been examined for potential antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory activity. Bitter melon is easy to grow in warm climates aggressively, so climbing anything within reach and producing prolifically. Traditional families in South and Southeast Asia often grow it on kitchen window frames where it provides both shade and a daily food supply. Its bitterness, the quality modern palates reject, is precisely where its most active compounds concentrate. Traditional cultures knew this. They learned to cook it in ways that balanced the bitterness without eliminating the benefit. That knowledge, passed down through generations of practical experience, encoded real biochemistry before the tools existed to name it. 1. The plant that civilization was literally built on. Aloe vera. No plant on this list has a longer documented history of combined food, medicine, and practical application than aloe vera. And no plant has been more thoroughly absorbed into commercial culture, while most of its original depth of use has been quietly forgotten. Ancient Egypt called aloe vera the plant of immortality and included it in burial preparations for pharaohs. Ancient Greek physicians documented its use for wound healing, digestive conditions, and skin applications. Traditional Ayurvedic medicine used it internally for liver health, digestion, and inflammation. Ancient Chinese medicine used it for skin conditions, fever, and constipation. Traditional cultures across the Arabian Peninsula used it as both food and medicine for millennia, and it grew wild enough to be freely accessible. What makes aloe vera stand apart is the breadth of documented applications across cultures with no contact with each other, all arriving at the same conclusions about the same plant. Modern research has examined aloe's main bioactive components. Ace-mannan, a polysaccharide found in aloe gel, has been studied for potential immune-modulating effects and wound-healing support. Aloin compounds found in the latex layer have been studied for their laxative properties, which aligns precisely with traditional internal use. Studies have shown aloe gel may help support skin barrier function and hydration. Research has also examined aloe's potential in supporting gastrointestinal health, including work on IBS and gastric reflux. But here is what most people miss. Fresh aloe is edible. The inner gel, separated from the bitter latex layer, can be consumed directly or added to drinks. Traditional cultures that had access to aloe plants maintained them in or near homes for exactly this reason: immediate access to both food, nutrition, and healing application without any preparation or cost. The commercial beauty industry has built a multi-billion-dollar empire on a simplified, diluted version of what this plant naturally contains. Traditional families with a single potted aloe plant on a windowsill have access to the real thing at all times, for free. Aloe vera has been used by humans for over 6,000 years across nearly every civilization that encountered it. That is not a trend. That is a verdict from history. Here is the thread that runs through every plant on this list. None of them were discovered recently. None of them are new. Every single one has a history measured not in years but in generations, in centuries of observation, refinement, trial, and practical application, by people who depended on what worked and had no patience for what did not. These were not primitive guesses. They were the accumulated results of thousands of years of human experience, encoded into daily food culture, traditional medicine systems, and generational household knowledge before modern science had the instruments to explain why they worked. Modern research is not discovering these plants, it is confirming them. It is finding the molecular mechanisms behind what traditional cultures already knew from observation. And in many cases, what the research confirms is not a diluted version of the traditional claim, it is a validation of it. The deeper question this list raises is not which plant you should try next. The deeper question is, what does it say about modern food culture that so many of these powerful, accessible, practically free plants have been replaced by expensive, processed, laboratory-produced alternatives? And the answer to that question is uncomfortable. Because the plants that built civilizations, the ones that sustained armies, fed families through famines, healed wounds without hospitals, and supported health across conditions that modern populations now treat as inevitable, most of them are still here, still growing, still offering what they always offered. They did not change. We did. So here is the challenge. Pick one plant from this list you do not currently use. Just one. Look at where it comes from, how to grow it or source it, and how traditional cultures prepared it. Start there. Notice what changes. And then come back to the comments and tell us which one you chose and whether it surprised you. If this kind of knowledge is what you want, more of the real history of food, plants, and traditional healing that modern culture has quietly moved away from, subscribe, because the next video goes deeper. And it starts with a question that most people have never thought to ask about the food already in their kitchen. The answer will change how you shop, how you eat, and what you believe is possible from a single plant. See you there.